Ever find yourself rooting for the underdog? Well, get ready to dive into a story that's all about that. We're talking about a real-life David and Goliath situation, but this time it's playing out in the world of small business.
We've got emails, right? And these emails detail a deal gone wrong, leaving a small business owner with, well, with a warehouse full of unsold bags and a 15,000-pound hole in their pocket. So let's unpack this.
You know what's really gripping about this story? It's how relatable it is. We're not just talking about, numbers on a balance sheet here. These emails, they reveal the human cost when a large corporation's actions, and these actions could even be legal, contradict its carefully crafted image. It's that classic tale of two businesses, right? We've got Cora plus Spink, there are artisan bag makers, and then on the other side, we've got the retail giant, that's Dobby's Garden Centers. But before we get into the nitty-gritty of how this deal fell apart, let's rewind to the beginning. Cora plus Spink's first email, it's brimming with optimism about this partnership. They even go so far as to highlight the challenges that come with wholesale, which, in hindsight, oof.
And that's where, and this is crucial, a firm grasp of credit terms becomes absolutely vital for every small business owner.
100%.
Yeah.
So walk us through it. What do we really talk about when we say credit terms?
Okay, so imagine a system built on trust and a whole lot of pay-you-laters. It's basically like the lifeblood of many businesses, especially in retail. So they place this large order with Cora plus Spink. They get all those gorgeous bags up front. And then, well, the agreement is that they pay within a certain time frame, usually somewhere between 30 to 90 days.
Okay, so it's like an IOU, but on a much larger scale.
Yeah.
And it keeps things moving, but it really hinges on that trust factor you mentioned.
Exactly. And that's where the risk comes in for small businesses, for businesses like Cora plus Spink. Think about it. They've poured their hearts and souls into creating these bags. Not to mention a significant amount of money. We're talking over 10,000 pounds. They even paid their workshop in India up front. They operate with integrity. But what happens when that trust is broken?
And break it does. Because it seems, wants it all. A massive order of these beautiful handcrafted bags, even customized point-of-sale materials, which, by the way, set Cora plus Spink back another 4,000 pounds. They really believed in this partnership, went all in. And then, well, the email chain takes a bit of a turn.
A turn for the worse, really. And you know what's really fascinating here? Cora plus Spink's finance team, they uncover some concerning information about these. It turns out that this retail giant, well, they aren't exactly in the best financial shape. They're restructuring, they're closing stores. Not exactly a picture of stability.
Talk about a red flag.
Yeah.
So what happens when Cora plus Spink confronts about these, let's call them financial tremors? Did try to deny it?
Not at all. In fact, they actually confirmed it. Comes right out and confirms that they're on shaky financial ground, basically admitting that they can't guarantee they'll be able to honor the agreement they made about payment terms. Remember those credit terms we talked about? Yeah, well, in this case, the music stopped, and it was Cora plus Spink who were left holding the bag, both literally and figuratively.
And by the bag, we mean a warehouse full of them, plus a 15,000-pound hole in their budget. Ouch. And this is so much more than just a business mishap. You can really feel the emotional weight of this betrayal in Cora, plus Spink's emails that come after. I don't know about you, but I'm getting fired up just thinking about it. I mean, a 15,000-pound loss for a small business, that's not just a line item on a spreadsheet. We're talking missed opportunities, potentially delayed projects, maybe even wages, and you could just hear the heartbreak in Cora plus Spink's email.
And this is where the conversation really starts to shift, We're moving away from just business as usual and into something a lot more ethically complex, because it really lays bare the power imbalance at play in these kinds of relationships. You've got Cora plus Spink, a small business operating with transparency, committed to ethical sourcing. And then you've got this large corporation presenting a certain image, but their actions tell a totally different story.
It's easy to think, well, it's business, tough luck. But this feels different.
It is different. And I think it's important to go back to Dobby's restructuring here, because while it might make sense from a purely business perspective to close unprofitable stores, it does make you wonder, how did that restructuring, those decisions that were made internally, how did they actually impact the agreements Dobby's already had in place? Were they upfront about all of this with Cora plus Spink right from the start?
Are you suggesting that even if Dobby's didn't technically breach the contract, there's still a gray area here? Ethically speaking.
Exactly. It raises questions about responsibility. What responsibility did have to be transparent about their financial situation with Cora plus Spink? And it makes you think about the bigger picture, too. These, just like a lot of large companies these days, they promote themselves as being all about sustainability, about ethical practices, but do their actions line up with that image they're projecting?
It's giving greenwashing, right? Like they're
Yeah.
trying to look good, but not necessarily walking the talk.
Precisely. And for consumers today, especially as more and more people are becoming interested in ethical sourcing and sustainable practices, this situation really highlights a critical disconnect. And it underscores the need for businesses to be more transparent and for us to hold corporations accountable for their actions.
So where do we, as consumers, even begin with all of this? It's easy to feel powerless.
That's what makes Cora plus Spink's call to action at the end of their email so important. Because they didn't just stay silent, they didn't just absorb this loss and move on. They chose to share their experience and urge people to spread awareness, to support small businesses. They're taking something negative and turning it into an opportunity for change.
Which is pretty inspiring when you think about it. They're reminding us that we're not powerless in these situations. Every purchase, every decision we make as consumers, it's like casting a vote.
It's about putting our money where our values are, choosing to support businesses that are prioritizing transparency, that are operating ethically.
And it's bigger than just spending our money, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's about being informed, asking the right questions, maybe even being willing to spend a little bit more to get that transparency and ethical sourcing.
Absolutely. And I think consumers are getting more and more savvy about that kind of thing.
For sure.
We're not just looking at, catchy slogans or marketing campaigns anymore. Consumers are researching brands. They're digging into those supply chains and they're demanding better.
We've seen this movement growing, haven't we? Especially with younger generations. It's not just a trend. It feels like a real shift in values.
It does. It really does. And this whole thing with Cora plus Spink, it really just highlights how important storytelling is within that movement. They could have just stayed silent. They could have taken the hit and moved on. But instead, they chose to speak up. They sparked a conversation. And now they could potentially change how other businesses operate.
It really makes you think. So as we start to wrap up this deep dive, we want to hear from you. Have you experienced anything similar?
What parts of Cora plus Spink's story really resonated with you? Do you actively try to support ethical companies that are transparent about their practices?
Tell us about it. We want to hear your experiences, your questions, even your frustrations. Let's keep this conversation going. You can find us on social media. Just use the hashtag support small ethical biz.
Because this story, it's not just about one bag company and one retailer, is it?
No.
It really gets at some much larger questions that we're all trying to figure out. Questions about what responsibility corporations have, especially in a world that's so interconnected. And how can we as consumers be a part of driving real change?
Big questions. Not always easy answers, but by continuing to learn, continuing to ask questions, and by supporting businesses that share our values, I think we can all play a part in creating a future that's more ethical and more sustainable. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.